What is the hardest thing you have ever done? I'm going to ask a different question that is very, very similar. What is the hardest thing you have ever done in the name of your faith? Today we're going to be talking about 3 men who did something very hard and very scary because they believed in God. And I want you to be thinking about, is there a time when you have done something challenging or hard or scary because of God and because you believe in Him? And if not, have there been times when you maybe should have done something hard or scary or challenging in the name of your faith and you missed that opportunity? We're going to be talking about Daniel chapter 3 today. And you may remember that Daniel lives in Babylon, but he is an Israelite, or he is a Jew, but he lives in Babylon, and that is because the Israelites have been exiled into Babylon because they still did not repent and return to the Lord, and so now they're exiled in Babylon. And so Daniel and 3 of his friends that we're going to talk about today live in Babylon, and the king of Babylon's name is Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel's 3 friends are named Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But when they get to Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar wants to change their names. And it doesn't say why he wants to change their names, but we do know that Hananiah means gift of the Lord, or the Lord is merciful. Mishael means who is like our God. And Azariah means the Lord saves, or the Lord has saved. And so Nebuchadnezzar changes their names to something that we might be more familiar with, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But I think that he changes their names because their names reflected the faith that they had in God. But when he changed their names, did it change their faith that they had in God? We will find out in our story today. Let's read Daniel chapter 3, verses 1, and then verses 5 and 6. Daniel 3:1. Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, and set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And then moving down to 5 and 6. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all types of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. So King Nebuchadnezzar sets up this really big gold statue and says, every time the musicians play music, everyone has to bow down. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are there. They play music, and what do you think they do? Do you think that they fall down and worship? What would you do? You're in a crowd of people. You're far away from your homeland. Maybe no one would even know if you bowed down or not. What would you do? Everyone else is bowing down. What would you do? Well, they don't bow down. And then some people that see them go and tell the king on them and say, those Hebrews, they didn't bow down. And so let's read about King Nebuchadnezzar's reaction to this. Let's read Daniel chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image the image of gold I have set up? Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. So the king of the land, brings these three men to him, and he's really mad, and he says, why aren't you doing this? Are you really not bowing down like I've told everyone to bow down? And he said, if you're ready, we'll play the music and you bow down, and if you bow down, great. But if you don't, I'm going to throw you into a fiery furnace. And they say, we don't have to defend what we're doing to you. Our God can save us from you. He can save us from your hand. But even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow down to these gods or serve this golden image that you've put up. How brave is that? How brave is that? Not only, they didn't do it because they thought for sure God would save them. They were prepared for the possibility that God wouldn't save them, that they would die in a big ball of fire. But even if they did, they weren't going to bow down to another God that wasn't the Lord. Have you ever been tempted to put things above God? I think yes. We put things above God all the time. That doesn't mean you bow down and pray to things that are not the Lord. But you do put things above God. You value things above God. Would you stand alone in a crowd of people and do the right thing? If everybody else in your class was doing something bad, would you be the person that stood and said, no, I'm not going to do that thing? I think the story shows the importance of having friends that also believe in God. It doesn't say that Shadrach was all by himself and he stood up. And he might have. He might have been able to stand up by himself. But it's easier to do the right thing when you know your friends are going to do it with you. And so you guys, when you're looking for your best friends or your closest friends, make sure that they believe in God. And if they don't, you can be friends with them, but not close friends, or know that it's going to make it harder on you to stand for the right things. So let's see what happens they say, we don't have to defend ourselves. God can save us, but he might not. Let's see what Nebuchadnezzar says to that, because he was mad already. He was kind of already mad, and they kind of talked back to him. So let's read verses 22 through 27 of Daniel 3. The king's command. So he tells his people, throw them in the fire. And actually, he says, make the fire 7 times hotter than normal and then throw them in. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot that the flames of fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw into the fire? They replied, certainly, Your Majesty. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the fiery, blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. And the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. So they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Have you ever been around a campfire? You don't even have to get that close to it and you smell like fire, right? These 3 men were thrown all the way into a fire, and they didn't even smell like fire. Their clothes weren't singed, their hair wasn't burned. Have you ever gotten too close to a fire and burned your hair? I have. Maybe if your hair is shorter, it might not be as dangerous for you, but those of us with longer hair, we've probably all burned our hair a little bit. It smells bad. They didn't even smell like fire. And there was another person in there walking around with them. And Nebuchadnezzar says, it looks like the son of the gods. Who was with them? Nebuchadnezzar says, sons of the gods, or later he says an angel. I believe it was Jesus, the Son of God, right? If you're going through something, if you're struggling, if you're worried or anxious about something, know that Jesus is in it with you. He's not going to let you be there by yourself. He loves you so, so much, and he will be with you in it. So they were not burned. Their clothes were not burned. Their hair was not burned. But what was burned? I want you to look back. It says that these 3 men firmly tied were thrown into the furnace. And then later it says, but I see 4 men up walking around, unbound. So what was burned? The ropes. The ropes that tied these men up were burned. I think sometimes we go through hard things because we need freedom from something we're struggling with. I think sometimes our sin wraps around us and binds us up, and then we struggle and we go through something hard. Jesus is with us in the struggle, but we go through something hard so that those ropes binding us can fall away. You guys, if you're going through something hard, look for what the Lord is teaching you in it. Not that he's causing it. Sometimes our own choices cause things to go badly for us. But I want you to look for what you can learn from it. And I also want you to look for where's Jesus in it, because he's in there with it with you. Let's keep going. Verses 28 through 30. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel, rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. Their faith showed King Nebuchadnezzar who God is and what God is capable of. Has your faith ever shown anyone who God is and what he's capable of? I asked you earlier if there's something that, if you've ever made a stand or done something hard because of your faith. If you have, I'm almost willing to promise that that showed someone who God is and what he's capable of. We stand for the Lord. Even among a crowd, if we're the only ones standing, we stand for the Lord. And when we do that, it shows who God is and what he is capable of. There's a lot of times in scripture when people cry out to the Lord when they're in trouble. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego cried out and said, even if he doesn't save us, we're going to believe. The Lord wants to save his people because he loves us. So if you're going through something, pray and cry out to the Lord. Look for the lesson that maybe you need to be learning and look for where Jesus is in it with you. I hope you guys have a great week.